Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fantasy Table, brought to you by the Blues Table. I am your host, Luke Verkamp, and unfortunately tonight, Austin could not join me as both him and myself have had internet problems today. He actually has not had internet at all today, so yeah, it's just going to be myself tonight. If you want to get questions answered or get more start to sit decisions from us, go ahead and follow us on Twitter at the Fantasy Table, or Austin's personal at the Austin Isaac, or myself at Big Verkamp. Go ahead, add us, DM us, whatever you want to do. We'll get your questions answered as soon as possible. As for today, I am just going to give you a quickened version of the show, just kind of go through some things, go through news and notes. While Austin's not here, I did not want to just leave you guys without any information, so I'm going to give you as much information as I can tonight, but it's going to be a shortened version of what we normally do. Starting off with the news, I'm going to start off with the biggest news of the weekend, which was that the Deshaun Watson trade rumors have started back up again. Now, there's four main teams interested in Deshaun, which is Miami, who is the most likely trade candidate at this point. They're saying around 50% towards Miami. And then other teams that are now interested is Carolina, Philadelphia, and Denver. Miami, Tua's been playing really well, so it surprises me. But I mean, if you can get a top quarterback in the league on your team, I guess it makes sense. As for Carolina, they mainly did that because Darnold has not looked very good recently. And to be quite honest, Deshaun Watson with DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson, and Christian McCaffrey would be really good. For Philadelphia, Jalen Hurts, while he's been good for fantasy, he has not been good for the NFL and for the Eagles. So while he could develop more down the line, I think that Deshaun Watson would instantly just do wonders for that team. And as for Denver, they have great offensive weapons, but they have Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock as their quarterbacks currently. While I do like Teddy Bridgewater, he is nowhere near what Deshaun Watson's talent level is. So, yeah, those are the main candidates right now. And something that I saw going around on Twitter was people asking if they should buy low on like Jalen Waddle or Will Fuller. And in my opinion, I would not. Mainly because, first of all, Deshaun Watson would have to get traded, which nobody knows if that will actually happen before the deadline. Number two, he has to not get put on the commissioner's exempt list. I don't think he will, just because from what I've heard, Deshaun Watson's situation is not the same as what the commissioner's exempt list is made for. So if he does get traded, he would be able to play right away. But still, there's the possibility that he does get traded and the NFL will receive a lot of backlash, and the NFL will defend itself by putting Watson on the commissioner's exempt list. Number three, which this one's a big one, Deshaun is going to have to want to play for the team that he's getting traded to. He has a no trade clause in his contract right now. So say if Washington wants to trade for Deshaun Watson and they'll send him like 5 first-round picks, as much good as that would be for Houston, if Deshaun doesn't want to play there, he could say no and the deal is not going to be done. He has reportedly said yes to Miami already. So if you are buying weapons from any team, it would be Miami. But the thing is I think it's a long shot for him to get traded the way it is. I would not take the risk and try to get a weapon on one of those teams. But yeah, if you can buy low, then go for it. I have no problem either way because the players have been playing good anyway. Like Jalen Waddle has played all right anyway. Moving on though, Zach Wilson, he's out 2 to 4 weeks with a PCL injury, which the Jets just traded for Joe Flacco from the Eagles. And to be quite honest, I don't know if he's going to be starting because Mike White actually did something once Zach Wilson left the game. But I don't see this as a major upgrade for the Jets offense in general. Corey Davis and Jamison Crowder could get a little bump up, maybe even Elijah Moore. They could get slight bumps up just because Joe Flacco likes to throw the ball. But I don't see him doing very much to warrant any movement there. Sam Darnold got benched with his performance against the Giants, but he's still named the starter as the season moves on. Darnold, the experiment seems like it's up and down. I'm not sure what to say about the matter, but I think that the Panthers will probably be looking to move off him in this next year's draft potentially. Mahomes got hit pretty hard, including snapping his neck back. He cleared a concussion protocol, but from what it sounds like, Andy Reid just wanted to hold him out for the rest of the game, which is smart because they're getting blown out by the Titans, and there's no need to risk Patrick Mahomes for a fourth quarter blowout. Miles Sanders got carted off with an ankle injury. Reports are that it's not as bad as what it looks. So he's still going to miss time, most likely, but not as much as what people originally thought based on what it looked like. Josh Jacobs left early with a chest injury. From what it sounds like, he will be back after their Week 8 bye, so not much to worry about there. Thankfully, he got a touchdown before he left in this game, so he still got you some fantasy points this week. DJ Chark will officially miss the rest of the season, so hopefully this just means more targets for Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault, but it's Urban Meyer, so we'll see what happens. Tyrod Taylor is going to return to practice this week, and no offense against Davis Mills, but this is huge for the Texans offense, mainly Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks should get a bump up whenever Tyrod returns because he is a much better quarterback than what Davis Mills is. Nick Chubb is also expected to return to practice this week and play in this Week 8 game. So much for the D'Ernest Johnson show. It was great while it lasted. He looked like such a beast out there against Denver, but looks like that might just be a one-week thing. I still expect him to get some work because Kareem Hunt's still out the next couple of games, but I wouldn't count on him getting a load of touches to warrant any sort of like flex play with Kareem Hunt or with Nick Chubb back in there. It's definitely worth seeing how the rotation is used this coming week. If he's used a decent amount, then yeah, maybe he could be a flex play next week. But as for right now, I would not play him. Michael Gallup is designated to return from the IR. Well, he's not a guy that I would jump at the waiver wire. He is a guy to keep an eye on. He played for only part of the Week 1 game against Tampa, and he had 7 targets. So while Dalton Schultz has really stepped up in the Cowboys offense, I am worried that Michael Gallup coming back is going to take away from that. So keep an eye on both Schultz and Gallup to see what happens moving forward, but they could get their workload managed a little differently from now on. Devonta Adams is on the COVID reserve list. He is most likely out on Thursday night. He is vaccinated, so if he tests negative on Wednesday and Thursday, he will be able to play Thursday night. But if not, he's not going to play, which I expect because since he is vaccinated, the fact that he's on the COVID reserve list, that means that he did test positive. So I expect him to miss this next game. And I actually saw just earlier today, as I'm recording this on Tuesday night, that Alan Lazard is also on the COVID reserve list. Now, he is unvaccinated, so that means he will for sure be missing this game. I'll talk a little bit more about Alan Lazard later, but this kind of sucks for him. And final thing is that Johnny Smith left the game with a shoulder injury. And from what I saw on Twitter, now I know people say what they want about Twitter, but these were against verified accounts, so I trust them. Their thought is that it's an AC joint, so we'll see what happens moving forward with Jonnu. And now moving on I just want to go through some waiver pickups real quick. And starting off with the quarterbacks, I want to first mention Deshaun Watson. While, like I said earlier, I don't expect Watson to be traded, it's still worth that risk of picking him up because if he does get traded, he can play straight away. And if you can get him and he does get traded and he does play, that could be a top 5 fantasy quarterback the rest of the season for you that you just got off of waivers. The next guy that I want to talk about is Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, I know Austin talked about him quite a bit, and he's got a favorable matchup coming up the next few weeks. He's definitely a good bye-week replacement guy. But yeah, I know we talked about him a lot, so I'm just going to move on real quick. The last guy that I want to talk about quarterback-wise is Trey Lance. While he's not the starter yet, I do think that Kyle Shanahan's going to get a little bit tired of Jimmy G and want to start Trey Lance later on in this season. While Trey Lance might not be a good NFL quarterback yet, we just have to look at Jalen Hurts and see that just because you're a bad NFL quarterback doesn't mean that you're bad for fantasy. Jalen Hurts is great for fantasy, but he's bad for the NFL. And due to Trey Lance's rushing upside, I could see him being very similar. So he's definitely worth a stash right now. Oh, another thing with Watson that I forgot to mention is that even if he stays on the Texans, each weekend he gets reported as out because he's not playing for the Texans. So every week you can put him on your IR spot. Now, during the week, you'll have to take him off if you want to do any roster moves because, unfortunately, during the week, they don't count him out until later on in the week. So if you want to go through that hassle week in and week out, which to me, it would be worth it if he ever did get traded, he can take up an IR spot on the weekend. So, yeah. Now moving on to running backs, Kenneth Gainwell is the top running back out of the week, with Miles Sanders going down and probably going to miss a few weeks. Kenneth Gainwell is going to get most of that work, while Boston Scott is still in there and he's going to get some of the work. I don't see him getting as much work as what Kenneth Gainwell is, but they're both names to keep an eye on. Next guy is Kenyan Drake. While he's in 64% of leagues already, he's definitely worth adding if you have a spot. It's crazy because I told you to sell high on him a couple of weeks ago, but ever since John Gruden's been fired, he's actually been utilized a lot more, and I think that we could see a lot more of this moving forward. So he's definitely worth a guy to keep on the bench for now. I really want to see how it looks whenever Drake and Jacobs both play full games to see how that workload is managed. But I think that he could be a solid backup running back for the rest of the season. Now, while I wouldn't say to start him anytime, if you have like a bye week or an injury and you need to put him in the flex, he would probably be a good flex option from week to week. Some other names to watch out for is Brandon Bolden. He's been getting a lot of targets there in New England. And Samaje Perine, he's looked good and getting some work while Joe Mixon is healthy. So if Joe Mixon goes down, I feel like he would get a lot of work. As for wide receivers, Alan Lazard would be my top wide receiver pick of the week. There's not a whole lot of big names out there right now. We mentioned a lot in the previous weeks, like AJ Green, Tim Patrick, Hunter Renfrow, guys like that I would pick up before these guys. But to me, with Alan Lazard, he's getting worked in more and more as the weeks go on. Now, last year, Big Bob Tunyon, he got a lot of the work, especially getting touchdowns and stuff like that. And in these past couple of weeks, it's been Alan Lazard doing that. So while I wouldn't – you obviously can't start him this week against the Cardinals, unfortunately, because with Devonta Adams out, he probably would have done very well. I feel like he might be a part of this offense moving forward. And if you're catching passes from Aaron Rodgers, I think that's worth a bench spot for you. The other guy is Khalif Raymond. Now, you may have not heard this name, and I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't because he's only rostered in 7% of leagues. But he's actually might be the top receiver for the Detroit Lions. Everyone thought it was going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he actually got 0 targets against the Rams this past week. And that's not just 0 receptions, 0 targets. So that's not good. While also Khalif Raymond, he's gotten a good workload these past few weeks, including 8 targets against the Rams. So he's definitely a guy that, while he wouldn't be a top pickup or a top priority to start, he's definitely got to hold on to your bench, because if he's getting targets and he's the number 1 wide receiver on an offense, he's worth rostering. For tight ends, I'm just going to go through them pretty quickly because it's very barren. CJ Uzomah and Mo Alley-Cox. With CJ, I like CJ because he's on a very good offense with the Bengals. And the thing that scares me, though, is that he's getting 3 targets a game. And while he blew up for 91 yards and 2 touchdowns this past week, you can't expect that every week off of 3 targets. But definitely this week, if you have Darren Waller or even Mark Andrews who are on bye, CJ would be a fine pickup and start for me. And with Mo Alley-Cox, I really like him because he's getting integrated into the offense a little bit more, and he's one of the top red zone targets for Carson Wentz. So I really like that, and I hope that can stay going moving forward. While he's not a tight end 1 for me yet, he's on his way there if he can keep this up. This next section I'm going to go through fairly quickly because I was hoping Austin would be here to kind of get his thoughts on the subject, but it's to drop or not. And these are some bigger name players that haven't performed up to their expectations. And we're just wondering, a lot of people are wondering if they should drop these players or not. Now, as for this next section, I'm going to run through pretty quickly because Austin isn't here, but it's going to be to drop or not. And for this, it's bigger name players that are highly rostered that people are wondering if they should drop them or hold on to them. I'm going to start off with the biggest one, which is Allen Robinson. And this hurts me because I really liked Allen Robinson coming into the season. I thought he was going to be a top 10 receiver. And unfortunately, right now, he is the 59th overall wide receiver in fantasy football. While it's hard for me to say to drop him, I think you could. Unfortunate as it is. If you can get someone to trade for him based on name value, I would. Just let someone else deal with that mess, because to me, it's not worth the headache of wanting to start Allen Robinson, because if you have him on your team, you're going to want to start Allen Robinson because of his name. But you just can't at this point. His best success so far this season has been when Andy Dalton was the quarterback, and Justin Fields just does not seem to go his way as much as other quarterbacks do. Next guy is a popular sophomore breakout prediction, and it's Brandon Nyuk. Now, to me, he was my top sophomore breakout wide receiver this year. It was 1A, 1B with T. Higgins. But, yeah, I think he's droppable. He's only had more than 5 targets once so far this season, and he's had games like this past week where he had 1 and week 1 where he had 0. To me, he's definitely droppable. I don't think you could trade for him. You could trade him away at this point. Robbie Anderson is the next guy. And for Robbie, he's definitely a few weeks ago, I would have said, yes, drop him. But now I think you have to hold on to him, at least until Christian McCaffrey comes back. Because starting off the season, he wasn't getting any targets. He wasn't getting any work. But over this past 4 weeks, he's had 11 targets twice and 9 targets and a lower amount, 6 targets. But, I mean, he's getting the looks, it's just not turning into anything is the problem. He's only catching a very low percentage of these targets and very low receiving yard output, which is weird. But he's not a guy I want to start, but he's not a guy I want to drop just yet. I would hold on to him to see more. If you can trade him away or package him in trade, I would, but he's not worth dropping just yet. Damian Williams. Damian Williams to me is a drop. He came back from the COVID list this past week and only had 3 carries. Khalil Herbert has looked like the guy, and I think that he might take work from David Montgomery when Montgomery gets back. And for the Bears, they have a couple bad rushing matchups these next couple weeks, and then the bye. And by that time, David Montgomery will come back. So, yeah, to me, Damian Williams is a drop. Mike Davis, he's the 38th overall running back so far this year. And while I wouldn't want to drop him, if you can get a guy like Kenneth Gainwell, I probably would. I would try to trade him first because he's been decent. He's been consistent, getting around 10 points a game. But, yeah, I'd try to move on from him if you can. And as for the last running back that I want to talk about, it's going to be Myles Gaskin. Now, the thing is when Myles Gaskin, he's the number 15th overall running back so far this year, so you can't drop it. You cannot. He had a pretty rough schedule to start the year, and it kind of gets easier as the year goes on, so I would hold on to him. If you want to trade him away, I can understand why. I personally wouldn't recommend it. I actually found out today as well that Malcolm Brown got put on the IR, and the Dolphins also signed Duke Johnson to their practice squad. So Myles Gaskin might get more work as the season goes on yet. So I would hold on to him for now. Don't try to trade him away. I'd just hold on for the moment, see how things go these next couple weeks. And now for this last one. This one's a bit of a spicy one. It's kind of crazy to see his name on here, but Julio Jones. Now I know what most people would think, and that's crazy to think that you want to drop Julio Jones. But I have saw some people ask if it's worth dropping Julio Jones. He's the number 67th wide receiver in fantasy so far this year, and he has not really looked that good. For me, to me, I can't say to drop him. Because, like, we look at A.J. Brown even, his teammate. A.J. Brown had a horrible start to the season, but these past few weeks he's gotten a lot better. And while Julio hasn't gotten better these past few weeks, I'm still holding out hope that as the season progresses, he gets more acclimated to the offense and he can get some of these bigger plays back. But while I don't think you can start him right now, I don't think he is a guy that you can drop either. And the last segment that I'm going to do is starts of the week. Since Austin isn't here, if you want to hear his analysis on why he picks these players, make sure to add him or DM him on Twitter at the Austin Isaac to get his analysis on why he wants to start these guys. But as for quarterback, he has Daniel Jones or Carson Wentz. Daniel Jones is playing the Chiefs, and their defense is awful, while Carson Wentz is playing the Titans. And while their defense has stepped up these past couple of games, they still give up yards through the air and touchdowns. So both good matchups for them. As for running back, he's got Damian Harris, who is playing the Chargers. Chargers have been a average defense, and they haven't been good against the run. So Damian Harris would probably be a good start. Then you also have Emmanuel Sanders and Michael Pittman Jr. for his wide receiver starts of the week. Now, with Michael Pittman Jr., something that I want to mention with him is that as long as T.Y. Hilton is out, Michael Pittman Jr. should be in your lineup from what we saw so far this year. Carson likes Michael Pittman Jr., except for when T.Y. is in. while it's just one game, not a big enough sample size to go off of, I would like to see more of Pittman and Ty to be on the field together before I decide whether you should start Pittman every single week or not. And at tight end, the start of the week is CJ Uzama. Now for myself, my quarterback start of the week is Ryan Tannehill. And as much as I hate to say that as a Colts fan, the Colts give up the 14th most points to quarterbacks, which has been 8th in the past 4 weeks, including the monsoon game. So I hate to say it, but it's like whenever quarterbacks face the Colts defense, they almost lick their lips because they know they can get these big plays. The Colts secondary has been a mess recently and very depleted. Like we're playing backup safeties and cornerbacks. So where you have A.J. Brown and Julio Jones on the other side, that just creates a big mismatch. As for running back, Zach Moss is my start of the week. And I actually think he is a buy low target for you guys. So if you're like one of the top guys in your league right now, only have like 1 or 2 losses, he's definitely a guy I would try to be trading for because his second half of the season is up and down, but his playoff schedule is amazing. So I'd try to get him now while you can. The Dolphins are giving up the 6th most points to running back, which is 4th most in the past 4 weeks. And the Bills, they're going to be wanting to make a statement win after losing to the Titans. And I looked at the spread. It was like a 10-point spread in Buffalo's favor. So I'm going to expect the more they have the lead, the more rush attempts that Zach Moss is going to get. And moving on to wide receiver, I have Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton. The reason I threw Jeudy in here is in case he plays this week, which from what it seems like he is. Now, while I would be iffy on starting Jerry Jeudy his first game back from injury, I feel like you can. He's got a good matchup this week against Washington, as they gave up the 2nd most points to wide receivers so far this season. And I feel like this game is going to be pretty competitive, as Denver, they're going to want to stay afloat in the AFC wildcard picture. So they're going to be playing for the win pretty hard, so they're probably going to be passing a lot. And for tight end, I have Hunter Henry. First of all, it's a revenge game. He's going back to LA to play against his former team, the Chargers. And the Chargers have been pretty bad against tight ends. They gave up the 2nd most points to tight ends so far this year. And on top of both of that, Jonnu Smith is probably going to be out this next week. So he's going to be getting all the targets, just like how Zach Ertz got the targets whenever Dallas Goedert was on the COVID list. I think Henry's probably a smash play, and I look for him to repeat his touchdown from these past few weeks. Now, I know this has been a quick one, but that is all I have for you guys tonight. Unfortunately, Austin was not able to make it on the show, but hopefully we'll be back next week. For any questions or things you want to explain more, don't be afraid to add us on Twitter or DM us. We'll answer as soon as we can. We're trying to help you guys win. So, yeah, just let us know anything that you guys got. I just wanted to make sure that we were able to get a video out to you guys tonight, so that way you got some news for this next week. But, yeah, that's all I have for you guys tonight. Hopefully we can get this win this next week. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at the Fantasy Table, at the Austin Isaac, and at the Big Verkamp. But yeah, like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.